This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
I'm not even going to try and wrap my brain around it or explain it. I would rather get into the Wheel of Time.
You don't want to talk about time, you just want to talk about time?
The Wheel of Time, yes.
Okay, we got to put a wheel on it.
Yeah.
And then
we can talk about it.
Make it make sense.
Because otherwise, how do you explain time? I mean, that's really... It's just infinitely stretching forward, back and forth, like forever. Man, our brains just don't do infinity. Mine certainly doesn't.
No. You can try. You can have a very good time trying, but I don't know if you can achieve.
My favorite arguments online are when people argue about, like, well, you know, the wheel turns and the same things have to happen again. And then people start arguing about how long a turn of the wheel is. And they're like, well, no, each one's about 3,000 years, right? Because this one was, so you got 7 ages, 3,000 years. And other people are like, no, the last turn is the age of the universe. It's billions of years, right? Like, and then you have a reset and a big bang. Like, what is the time scale of the wheel? And what's the time scale of an age? I think that's something that's impossible to answer. And it's something that totally changes what you can propose the Wheel of Time actually is.
Yeah,
and it's fictional, so it is whatever it needs to be, right, for the story.
This is why we need artists, is to help us grapple with the reality of time. We're gonna read a book called The Wheel of Time that somehow breaks it down into smaller, bite-sized pieces. Yeah, so today we're doing Rand is mean to Huron. That's basically the event of the chapter.
Rand bullies his old friends.
Yeah, basically. Rand is having a very bad time, and poor Huron is caught in the crossfire.
Rand's very bad, no good day.
Huron's very bad, no good day. Rewrites this whole chapter from Huron's perspective.
Jesus, the Borderlanders in general.
Yeah, no,
They almost get nuked.
This is playing chicken with a moving train, is what this is. Mm-hmm.
But we're moments from his epiphany, right? So we have to show him at his absolute worst, which is raining fire and death down upon his allies simply because they choose to act in a way that's not 100% in the way he wants, even though he hasn't communicated the way he wants, right? Like, this is Forsaken level badness where you're like, I'm trying to help you. Well, fuck, you didn't do it right. I'm cutting your throat and walking away, right?
Right. And this, he doesn't actually rain down fire, but the fact that he's about to is what gets Nynaeve to finally go find Tam, right? This is what makes her decide to follow through with Cadsuane's ask to find Perrin and to get that information from Rand. And the fact that she cares and stops him is why he gives her that information and tells her where to find Perrin. Like, this event really does precipitate getting Tam on site. So with that, I guess I should read us in.
Yeah, it's a Nynaeve POV, even though it's 100% a Rand chapter.
Very Rand, but yeah, all in Nynaeve's voice, which is fun because Nynaeve is cranky.
Mm-hmm. This is, again, I think Sanderson does a great job with Nynaeve. I don't understand how he got Nynaeve so well and totally missed Matt, because it's the same character.
Yeah, there's something there, because, I agree. His Nynaeve feels very much like we've got her growth arc since the early books, and she's really come into herself, and her motivations are all still in alignment, and yeah, he gets her so right. All right, with that, I'm going to read us into Chapter 44, Scents Unknown, and our symbol is the snake and the wheel. And the title obviously references Huron going, never smelled that before. Smells like the devil. Anyway.
By the way, I got curious. I was sitting on one of the chat bots, AI, and I was like, act like a Wheel of Time fan. And it gave me a pretty good summary about what they loved about the Wheel of Time. And I was like, oh, this is decently accurate. And I was like, hey, tell me about Scents Unknown, since I was doing that recording. What do you think? And it was like, great Perrin chapter. Just fantastic. And I was like, oh, no! That's a miss.
More proof that we don't need these stupid bots.
It's just like, oh my god, isn't Perrin's not even in that?
Well, but it talks about smelling, so clearly it had to be about Perrin.
Yeah. And then went on about how great Perrin was in the chapter, and it was like from a totally different chapter. And I even told it like it was chapter number or whatever it was in this book, Scents Unknown, and it was like, oh yeah, Perrin chapter.
This is why you can't trust AI with anything, because it's literally just slapping things together based on pattern recognition with no discernment whatsoever. To say it's hallucinating is to give it more capacity than it really has. It's not hallucinating. It's just slapping shit together based on association. But anyway, Don't use AI. Anyway, read it. Tarwin's Gap is the place that makes the most sense, Nynaeve argued. She and Rand rode on an overgrown road in the open grassland of Moredo, accompanied by a crowd of Aiel. Nynaeve was the only Aes Sedai there. Narishma and Nafe rode near the back of the group, looking sullen. Rand had forced their Aes Sedai to stay behind. He seemed particularly determined to assert his independence from them lately. Nynaeve was astride a pure white mare named Moonlight, appropriated from Rand's stable in Tyr. It still seemed odd that he should have his own stable at all, let alone one in each of the major cities of the world. Tarwin's Gap, Rand said, shaking his head. No. The more I think about it, the more I realize that we don't want to fight there. Lan is doing me a favor. If I can coordinate an assault alongside his own, I can gain great advantage. But I don't want to distract my armies with the Gap. It would be a waste of resources. A waste of resources? The Gap was where Lan was heading, like an arrow loosed from a Two Rivers longbow, heading there to die. And Rand said helping was a waste? Wool-headed fool. Gritting her teeth, she forced herself to calm down. If only he would argue, rather than speaking in that distant way he had recently adopted. He seemed so emotionless, but she had seen the beast get free and roar at her. It was coiled inside him, and if he didn't let his emotions out soon, they would devour him from the inside. And that is the vibe of the chapter, is her going, oh God, ticking time bomb, ticking time bomb, this is a problem.
And being like,
going,
I don't feel anger anymore.
I'm definitely falling apart.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah, sure you don't feel anger anymore, as he, like, exhibits all the classic signs of anger over and over and over again. You're like, okay, angry boy. Seriously? Like, no anger for you?
Yeah, and, like, Nynaeve is, Nynaeve, I'm not shouting, shouted Nynaeve Almira.
Yes.
Right? Like, if there's ever a character to be like, I think I'm seeing a little bit of anger in the non-angry person, it would be Nynaeve.
It takes one to know one, you know?
Yeah, exactly. She is very familiar with being angry and saying she's not angry. She knows he's angry.
And yeah, this whole, like, I want him to argue, because that's normal behavior. That's something where you can, like, have a discussion with somebody. Like, an argument is one thing. This is just, like, he's ignoring any input. He's completely isolated himself from anyone he might trust. He's doing whatever he wants, no matter what anyone else says. It's basically impossible to deal with, but because he's the Dragon Reborn, everyone just does what he says. Power corrupts, and he's very corrupted, I think, in this situation, where he's, like, not listening to anybody.
And this is a very specific kind of corruption, because normally power corrupts means you get drawn into bullshit with other human beings. This man is lost in a maelstrom of, like, magic-induced madness and just his own internal stuff. Like, he's corrupted in a way that is not usual.
I would say he's a victim of his own success. He's had so much success taking over countries, winning wars, becoming king. I mean, he's conquered half the world in 2 years.
He's got some Alexander the Great going on, but I don't know that that's corruption in the traditional sense that phrase is used.
That's fair, right? Like, but I do think he thinks he's right about anyone, and advisors always lead him wrong, so he only does what he wants. Like, the number of people, reach a measure, especially look at, like, directors, people like that who have this measure of success artistically, and then use that power to make what they want. And there's this balance between making what you want and listening to people's feedback.
Yeah, it's a power hungry thing. I don't know if it's corruption. Just because words have to mean things, they can't.
No, but and I think there are two very separate meanings of corruption here, right? There is the I take money I get bribed, I take money, I do things to better myself alone, right? And then there's just, like, things that are kind of like falling apart and are corrupted. I don't know, whatever.
I think of corruption as being very interpersonal. I don't think buckling under the pressure of your existence is the same. I don't know what the word is for that. There's got to be a word for that.
I'm trying to think, like their personality is corrupted by this power that has, like, no longer makes them listen to the people around them, right?
I feel like there's a better word for that.
All right, well,
it's not coming to mind.
I was like, if you find it, go with it. Let me know. But in the meantime, I'm going to say corruption.
Okay, well,
because people change with power, and one of those changes is the not listening to advisors, right?
Yeah, that's just corruption is specific. That's different.
Okay.
All right. So Nynaeve is going back and forth with Rand about Lan. There's this whole... I mean, and Rand is to a certain extent being kind of wise in the thing of like, yes, I maybe shouldn't strike at the super obvious place because maybe my enemy will have anticipated that. And it's like the first rule of war to not do what your enemy wants you to do or expects you to do. So like, we do need to be a little bit sneakier than just throw everything at the exact spot where Lan is pointed. But he's not willing to save Lan, and that's a real deal breaker for Nynaeve, so they go back and forth quite a bit.
He's also willing to sacrifice the borderlands, right? He's willing to say, you know what? While the Trollocs are ransacking the borderlands and most of probably Cairhien and Andor, they're not going to be at the last battle, which is going to be at Shale Ghul. So I'm just going to gateway to Shale Ghul, let them ransack most of the civilized world, and as long as they're distracted while I'm beating the Dark One, that's fine. Dark One's gone. World can go fuck itself. You know, that's his strategy right now. And he's like, I am focused on one thing and one thing only, which is beating the Dark One. And I think I've talked about this, how like that's really what they're afraid of. If he goes to the last battle like this, he might win against the Dark One, but the world is in for another 3,000 years of darkness and terror and pain and destruction. We're not going to get the utopia of modern civilization that Rand has really set up in the earlier books before the taint really became bad. And so this battle strategy might win the last battle, but it's not going to make the rest of surviving and existing in the world fun for anybody.
Right, because you really do have to define what winning means and what winning is for. Winning for who, right? Like, Rand has just boiled it all down to winning. And it's like, but beating the Dark One isn't the only part of winning that matters. Right, Rand has boiled it down to I have to defeat the Dark One and that's it. And it's like, you need people who can live in the world after. You need to be able to live in the world after. Even if you die, you need to be pointed in such a direction that you could live in the world after.
And if you think about the statement that Robert Jordan said is the seals were weakened because of the corruption of people in the world, right? So the worse the world you make, the more the presence the Dark One has, the more likely he is to come back or weaken up, you know. I guess there aren't going to be seals anymore because he sealed them up completely at the end. But, you know, I think there is the Dark One has to be able to influence the pattern for people to still make evil choices, right? Like...
Well, right, the Dark One is necessary for humanity to be what it is.
Right.
You need a creator and a Dark One to, like, be the dynamo that makes human existence
makes choice possible, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Because sealing up the Dark One, he still exists, right? So the choice is always possible to free him again.
Right, the bore can be remade. He just undoes the fact that the bore was patched, right? He resets the prison to 0, but like there is still a thing inside that prison, and like you've headcanoned, there was even a understudy Dark One in the wings, just in case Rand did kill the Dark One, you know? Like, which I think makes a lot of sense. But no, I've always wondered, you're talking about this, like, people brought the Dark One into the world, like weakening the seals. I have always sort of wondered, like,
just because that's a statement from Jordan.
Yeah. I have always really just wondered, like, why is there things like, oh, there was an uprising of Dark Friends and they killed everyone? Like, to what end? You know, I've always wondered, to what end? Why are people doing that when it's clearly not the end of days, right? And I wonder now, or I guess it's obvious now, they were specifically trying to weaken the seals enough that the end of days could come about. They're actually manifesting the Dark One doing evil deeds because they know that that is chipping away ever so slightly at these grand cosmic bonds. And like, it's just, there's a whole cosmology of why Dark Friends do what they do across the millennia that I just hadn't quite put together. And then now I'm putting it together.
It's like devil worship. They're literally trying to summon the devil.
Exactly. And I've just always been like, but why? Like, to what end? Like, what mechanic in the world makes that make sense? And I've heard this thing about from Jordan, but I never had connected it to this until you said it just now. Like, oh, they knew. The Dark Friends knew. That's been part of like Dark Friend tradition this whole time, is like, we can bring the Dark One back if we just do enough evil shit. And it will take generations of us just being evil and perpetuating evil. But eventually we can bring our Dark Master back, etc., etc.
But you also have to remember, Dark Friends are just misinformation from Ishamael, and people and Ishamael being like, I'm the Dark One, worship me. And then being like, oh yeah, let's go worship the Dark One. Like, there's that level of like, being part of a Dark Friend group is like being dedicated to Ishamael more than it's being dedicated to.
Right, but Ishamael would be a great conduit to be like, hey, we can bring our world about if you do these evil deeds. Here's how you can max out your evil per lifetime. You know, he earns. I mean, he really is Nameless by default, right? He's doing the work to get the Dark One back by building an army of people who will just do evil shit for centuries upon centuries.
Yeah, I always feel like there's two levels of Dark Friends, right? Because there's the people who actually worship the Dark One and have like that, you know, go to Sheol Ghul and that sort of thing, right? The Forsaken, some of the more like advanced Dark Friends, right? I feel like they do get to communicate with the Dark One itself. And then there's like the people who think they're communicating with the Dark One and are just like worshiping Ishamael, but are still dedicated to the Dark One.
I mean, that's the difference between worshiping a saint versus worshiping the deity, right? Like, it's all still part of the same belief system. You're still devoted to the structure. You just, you know, have your personal patron saint as opposed to going for the big granddaddy sky god or whatever. I don't know.
Does that make Lanfear Jesus's mother?
I mean, sure. It's kind of weird given the Lanfear Rand relationship, but you know, that just feels like a very Greek myth at that point, which is fine, you know. that's traditional if we go back to the Greeks or the Romans for that matter, since they just pillaged the Greeks.
They really did.
Saying.
God, Romans and Christianity were like just robbed all the native cultures of all their, just knocked them over the head and changed the names of everything. Just like
hot take: the Romans are Christianity, and the Christian world is just the Roman Empire's latest iteration.
I'm nodding.
I'm sorry, but the Roman Empire is my Roman Empire, and it isn't dead, guys. Rome is still one of the most fancy pants city in the world. The Vatican Hill was in Rome, even if technically now it's legally its own country. Like, please. Anyway, hot take. The book. That's what matters.
Have we talked about the book yet?
Nynaeve tugs her braid. I love that for her.
Does she? What got her to tug her braid this time? I missed it.
Okay, so Nynaeve is thinking about how she has literally been about to leave Rand multiple times a day for days. She is on the absolute edge of just going to be with Lan. But she stays with Rand because she thinks that there's something to be done. And she tugs her braid in the middle of thinking about all that because she is, again, like in that, like, I should just leave. I should just leave. And she tugs her braid to be like, nope, stay. You must stay.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about how stubborn Rand is.
What good would it do to help Lan only to let the world fall into shadow because of a stubborn she-produce stubbornness? Again, Sanderson gets Nynaeve. It's just, that's so her.
There's this mention of the storm building to the north, and by the end of the chapter, she's like, oh, maybe it's not building to the north. Maybe it's just Rand.
Yeah, maybe it's just building.
Yeah, right
general,
here in front
everywhere,
of me. Yep.
Omnipotently. Yeah. Which, agreed, because this is really like, he's 3 threads away from completely breaking, you know?
So he breaks down his whole plan. I don't know. I think we went into it, right? Like, let them flood in, sacrifice the buffer states, attack Sheol Ghul, win the battle, and then let whatever happens. And, you know, and I think this is a good line here where she says, the Shan-Chan would wage their war to the south and west. The Trollocs would attack from the north and the east. The two would meet, eventually Andor, and the other kingdoms would be turned into a massive battleground. And I feel like that's like World War I, right? Like that's describing exactly what happened in World War I, is these two massive forces meet and just churn the ground into a bloody mess.
It also sounds kind of like the prophecy Rand got from the Finn, you know, about the the north and the south must be as one, the east and the west must be as one, the two must be as one. And you're like,
the two must be as one.
Okay, so I feel like maybe this is a prophecy could have gone a couple of different ways. This can either be a strong alliance or it can be a description of how everything turns into a giant battlefield. And like maybe that's what the Finn actually meant. Oh no. It's pretty bleak. Even as a reader going through this the first time, you're like, I don't know, that almost sounded like the Finn prophecy. The two will become as one and everyone will die. I don't like that.
There's also here where Rand says, my duty is to kill the Dark One. And I think this is one of those moments where he's like, no, I'm not going in there to imprison. Like he needs Aviendha to give him the idea of taking the Dark One guy shine rather than just killing him outright.
The most honor.
And that's the more honorable path, right? So here he's just on that, I'm going to kill him. And we learn later why that's a bad idea. I do think it would have been really cool if he did kill him and then he realized the mistake, and that's when you saw the moment of void in people's eyes, and he's like, what have I done? And then he grabs Padden Fane and sticks him in the prison and shuts it behind him, and it's like, you're good, you're evil, good, you can exist. And then that becomes the female half of the Dark One, right? And so then you have the alternating, like every turning of the wheel you kill the Dark One and get another one that alternates between like the Shadar Logoth evil and the Dark One evil, which is like the male and the female half of the true source, the true power.
Right.
The true power.
Binaries upon binaries upon binaries.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Like it would be really cool to have a binary evil.
Yeah.
But I think of it more as an external and an internal evil, right? Like the Dark One is evil to other people. The Shadar Logoth evil is evil, like more like domestic violence, right? Evil to one's own.
Right, right.
Shadar Logoth is police brutality. The Dark One is armies fighting wars. The Shadar Logoth is, attacking LA for riots by sending in the National Guard.
Riots, which are just protests against really violent and immoral and illegal seizures of people. They're not even riots. They're protests that are being escalated by cops.
Right. Sorry.
Now, National Guard.
Mm-hmm. We're fine.
What could she do to change it? She had to come up with a new strategy to influence the Rand Corporation. Sorry, what? Rand.
There's a lot of talk about like, oh my God, the farms are failing. Everyone can feel the storm.
Oh, and they're defending themselves. Yeah, Rand's got 200 people with him, but these farmers are still all stalwart. And so then we get Nynaeve thinking about how it's been a week since Cadsuane said, find Perrin for me. And she still hasn't made any progress on that. And like I said earlier, this event with Rand in this chapter is what gets her to really push to complete that mission. She doesn't want to because she doesn't want Cadsuane's plan to be the one that works, but this pushes her to, set her pride aside and follow the assignment. And it's been a week that Cadsuane's been like, oh my God, just do the assignment.
Which is 10 days.
Right, yeah. That's the Randland week.
So she goes up to Rand, and he's, of course, talking to LTT, right? We just see him muttering to himself, and then she's like, hey, Rand. And he's like, oh, what? Yeah. Sorry, I was on the phone talking to my old brain.
Right.
And so she kind of is like, do you know where Perrin is? And he's like, yeah, he's doing what I told him to do. Which, no, he's not, but whatever.
Yeah, first of all, no.
No. He's gone off on like 6 side quests, and this was supposed to be a like 1 week mission, and he's been gone for like months and months and months.
Right. And then Nynaeve's like, well, Perrin's just too peaceful to tell you no. He's just your gopher. And Rand's like, I've seen enough visions to know that Perrin's problem is not being too peaceful
anymore.
Yeah. That ship has sailed. Yeah, she tries to hide why she's asking about Perrin, and he sees right through it because she is particularly unaccustomed to lying, which is just so cute. She tries to lie, and he's like, well, an attempt was made. That was adorable. Anyway.
And that's why he can trust her, because he knows how bad she is at lying. Like, she doesn't necessarily have to take the oaths, right? Because she's lying, but she's just bad at it.
She's not a liar by inclination. She doesn't practice it. It's not something she ever thinks of herself as doing.
She's not inherently dishonest, and she's so blunt and upfront that it's like, yeah, I'm going to kick your ass. Like, why would I lie about that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when she tries to lie because she's trying to do a good eyes to die subterfuge, she's like, Well, at least I know that I can tell when you're doing Aes Sedai subterfuge. So, there's a calibration factor there. And he doesn't answer her question at this point. He keeps the information to himself until after she talks him down from doing mass murder.
Right, yeah. He has no intention of telling her at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But because, she's doing Aes Sedai shit. Whether or not she's good at it, the point is she's trying, and that is not his favorite, but she does keep him from doing atrocious war crimes, which he does appreciate eventually.
So they've gated into this crossroads that's near Farmatting. Yes. Which is where the Borderlands said they wanted to meet.
Yeah, and there's the whole traveling mechanics thing threads through this chapter where Sanderson gets way too into the weeds with how traveling can be used.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Fine, I guess. I do like the part where Nynaeve thinks about how it's surprising that the Aiel are doing such a good job of scouting and blending into the environment and adapting to the landscape, because she thought that the waste just all was the same, but she's heard some Aiel say the same thing about the wetlands. And it's like, yeah, it's just one of those fun cross-cultural, every landscape is unique and varied to the people that live in it.
You get to know the little variations. To them, it looks like trees. To you, it's like oak leaf, leather leaf, right? Or whatever the, different versions are. And to them, it's like, oh, they have names for different kinds of rock that you've never even heard of, probably.
Exactly. They have 18 different words for types of sand, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, Nynaeve just sees, it's just dunes. And it's like, well, but are these the tall shifting dunes, or are they the low rocky dunes? Are they the dunes that are wind, so on and so forth. There's always nuance.
He uses the phrase, the wheel of time turned, as this whole sentence, as a complete sentence. It feels a little out of place to me, but I can't put my finger on why, because the wheel of time appears everywhere in the series. Characters say it all the time. But I think it's because it's not a character saying it. I think because it's in the narration. The wheel of time turned. I'm you save that for the intros. Or for characters saying it.
Or at least to put in italics.
Yeah.
It's clearly an inside thought, but it's not in italics. So it just is the narrator voice. And it's another one of those little stylistic things that lets you know that Sanderson's writing it.
Yeah, I feel like the wheel turn would have made more sense. That's exactly Pants. That was my thought. I don't think he should have said the wheel of time turn. But then I looked it up and the characters say it all the time. And this is Nynaeve's thoughts. So I don't know why it feels so out of place to me, but it really does in this sentence. I went back and forth on that a bunch to be like, this isn't right. And I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah, I think it's just the way that Sanderson has a harder time separating the narrator voice from the character POV. RJ was really good at that, and Sanderson's a little softer on that boundary. Yeah,
because this does feel like omnipresent narrator, even though it's Nynaeve's POV.
Yeah, and I've noticed with a lot of books that just that line is rarely as crisp as it is with Jordan. Jordan was really clear about that in a way that most authors are more comfortable being more fuzzy.
Yeah, because Jordan, so much of his book was based around what people thought in that moment in place and time, right? And so it was really important that this was that POV, and they didn't know any more than they did, and their assumptions were really important. How they phrase things is really important. And I think you get to a couple of paragraphs in, and he's just info dumping with this character's POV, and the difference feels stark.
Yeah, which you switch to a different book entirely, a different author entirely, you're like, oh, different style. But it is extra stark when it's within the Wheel of Time books.
Right.
Oh, yeah, right. Different author. This is one of those moments where you really feel that different touch.
A little bit of Narishma as Ashamon, some descriptions of him as he's accompanying them.
Yeah, she drops back to ride with a man who's not quite as frustrating. And she has a pretty good talk with Narishma because he grew up in the Borderlands and they're going to meet the Borderlanders. So she's kind of trying to get someone else's perspective. Because, she's only a Borderlander by marriage. She hasn't lived there. She identifies with the Borderlands in a lot of ways. But Narishma actually lived the experience of being a Borderlander. So she wants his take on why the Borderlanders are doing what they're doing, why they're here instead of defending the Borderlands. And yeah, he actually is very un-Rand-like and just talks to her and gives his perspective. And
this whole chapter, he's following after Rand.
Disappointed.
I'm just saying, you could interpret that to say this is where he is the one who follows after
No.
The way you're shaking your head at me, he's like, no, that is not no. I'm not interpreting it that way. I'm not admitting that that's possible. That cannot be what the prophecy said or the fulfillment of it. I refuse.
Correct. No. This is just a person being willing to talk to someone for once in these damn books. And, it's because it's been a couple of books, right, since we saw the Borderlanders mysteriously collect and start on their mission. Like, they've really been backburnered.
Really, since, God, I even want to say, like, it was book 7. I'm pretty sure that they went out on their journey. Like, it was right after Demise Wells. Yeah.
Yes, forever ago. So I like that, we use this moment to remind us of what's going on there. Like, this is a deeply unusual thing for all the leaders to leave.
Didn't Elaine use them to secure her throne? Didn't Egwene use them to help, secure power as well somehow? Yeah, they've been used by everybody. They've marched all over the countryside looking for them. They've been stuck in the snow, and they have been absolutely useless because there's been nothing going on in the Borderlands. And so they went, see ya, peace out. Which I think is hiding all the activity that is probably going on, right? Because there's nobody there to see it.
Right. Yeah. So, it's nice to have Narishma be like, this is, we live to defend, and yet they left now of all times. Good people can do the wrong thing. Particularly when men who channel are involved. Like, he's not, like, nobody's clear on what's happening. Us as the reader going through for the first time, we don't know, but maybe we forgot, so we need Narishma to remind us. It's a very, very top secret mission. Only the leaders of the countries have any idea what's going on. Every single person following them is ignorant and sworn to secrecy, right? So,
and this is all prophecy based, right? This is all,
all of it.
All of it.
One foretelling 2,800 years ago, and they've held on to it this whole time.
I want it to be Guitarra Moroso, just because all of the good ones are Rand from her. But I like that this is just an ancient prophecy that they held on to. Yeah, it makes sense. Like, again, if you send this Rand to the last battle at the point, because they're not going to meet him until right before the last battle. And so if you send that Rand off to fight the Dark One, you're better off killing him and trying again next time.
Right. Literally, it would be better to go through the lack of a utopia that is killing Rand and just dealing with it, the consequences, rather than, seeing what he does.
Although on one level I go, but if he stayed bad, he would have just destroyed the world in Veins of Gold, and you wouldn't have had a chance to slap him. So why even bother? Right?
Because you need events to organize everyone else around. Right? Yes, the whole world actually hinges on Rand's internal thoughts, but in order for him to have armies, people need to see things happen. They need to have conversations and symbols and exchanges. And
I think it would have been interesting if he met with them and he couldn't come up with the name, and they tried to kill him and he fled, and that was part of his revelation and part of his breakdown is why are my allies trying to kill me? And then he comes back and he knows he has the revelation and knows the name and can come back and be like,
that would have been so cool, because it would have been oh no, all the prophecies broke down. Where are we going now? It would have been really unsettling after books and books of being yeah, we know how these prophecies are going to play out. If suddenly they started to fall apart, that would have been a really fun meta plot twist. Well, we got a regular book instead.
we could rewrite these a million different ways and a million different times.
I mean, we have gotten to about 500,000 rewrites at this point.
And so then we get what I think is one of the more disappointing reunions, right? Because I would have loved to see that they were so close, and Rand cared about Huron in book 2. And Huron was one of those characters that I was so excited to see again, because we didn't get to see him for a long, long time. We knew he was with the Borderlanders, but of all the characters that were introduced in the first 3 books that get complete storylines that are a big part of the first 3 books, Huron is one of the few that I feel had a long storyline and no resolution in any of the other books. He's just back to the Borderlanders, never talking about him again. And it's I don't know, he's not dead. Give him some more plot. He was a great character. He's got a unique ability of the sniffers, right? I'm so glad that Sanderson brought him back, and I'm so disappointed with the way Rand treats him, which I guess is kind of the point.
Yeah. Because Huron is the first person who insists on calling Rand Lord.
Right.
right? Like he's literally the first follower. He's the Bulin to Lan, right? He's the one that forces it to begin. He's the first follower. And it's like, I mean, in a sense, I do like that Huron was the character used for this because it cuts so deeply.
So deep, yeah.
But yeah, I feel like he does apologize to Huron later.
Yeah,
there is like a post Veins of Gold moment where Rand goes over to him and is like, "You fucking rule, dude. I really appreciate you. Sorry about being a complete ass waffle before." Like, I'm pretty sure that happens, but yeah, Huron deserved better, even though he is used very effectively here to make that cut so bitter.
Yeah, I think I'm even going back on Jordan. I think Huron deserved more screen time.
Yeah, Huron should have come back after he delivered his message to the Borderlands. He should have been like, "And I'm going back to Rand now."
Right, right. I would like to see him in the retinue. Kind of like a
Swan thing of like, I have an order of oaths, but like I need to go back to be with Rand and like use my sniffer abilities to help him. And
you know what would have been a really cool thing to see is Rand's fall in corruption through the smell of Huron. As he's like, I just like, he's like, I haven't been back to the palace in a while. And he goes in, he's like, I'm smelling something really off coming from the palace, you know? And then it's like, it's coming from Rand occasionally. And then like over time, he's like, it's really strong or it's happening more often. And like, you could sort of sprinkle that through the books as you see like Rand's corruption becoming more and more and more. And the violence he does becoming more significant.
Right. Oh, but Nentok makes a really solid plot point. Huron would have sniffed out Dark Friends way too easily if he had been around Rand.
Because he sniffs out violence, not necessarily like there's a lot of violent people in this series who are not Dark Friends.
Yeah, but the people that Rand has been around. Ugh.
Yeah, it is. I think it is a little bit of a plot hole. The Huron can't sniff out Dark Friends thing because it's like Dark Friends again. And this is canon where he's like, I can't smell Dark Friends because violence smells like violence. But there's a few things that smell worse and. Right, Fane was one, Trollocs and Shadowspawn are another, and now Rand is the third.
Right.
But like Dark Friends in general don't have that off smell.
Yeah, but I'm just saying Rand tends to attract very high-ranking Dark Friends. So, But yeah, Huron should have gotten more of a plot reward for being so present in all of Book 2 and so loyal even when he wasn't getting to be present on the page. And yeah, it would have just been nice to have this betrayal mean more because we'd actually had subsequent interactions, right?
You know who I would love to see Huron actually end up with is Matt in the Band of the Red Hand. Because he accompanies him back to the White Tower.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. And then Perrin and Matt would each have a sniffing of evil things ability with their armies. Slightly different mechanisms, but two of his most important armies would have that at the head.
And then he could be like, I remember when Lord Matt was just a sick little, nothing, right? Like,
right. And Tomanes is like, pretty sure that was never true. And here I was like, oh no, it was true.
It was true. Yeah. And he could have his worship of Lord Matt or Lord Rand at a distance and like not really and be like, but he's I like Lord Matt, but he's no Lord Rand, that's for sure.
Right. And then Matt ends up really appreciating that because Huron's one of the few people who like doesn't hero worship him so hard because his hero worship is focused elsewhere.
Right. Yeah. No,
And then when Huron goes back to him being like, yo, Matt, there is something wrong with Rand. Matt is like, oh, okay, notes taken because I'm used to using your ability and I know that if something's wrong with Rand, then, like they're just, yeah, we could rewrite these books a million ways. We should probably focus on the way they were written. So Rand treats Huron like he might be another Daughter of the Nine Moons actually being Semirog situation, right? Picks him up, spins him around, asks him a trick question.
Right. What did the men look like? They weren't men. They were frogs.
Right. Exactly.
Grolem, whatever.
Froggish.
So yeah, this is where we get the line, that's strange. Never smelled that before. What? Rand asked. I don't know. The air, it smells like a lot of death, a lot of violence. Only not. It's darker, more terrible. That's Rand he's smelling. And in bale-firing Natrim's Barrow, probably, right? That's his most recent violent act of violence.
And a truly outstanding amount of violence. Like, it's hard to kill that many people at once with more conventional means.
That also damaged the pattern.
And it damaged the pattern at a more intrinsic level.
Or, wait, what am I thinking? Or it's just the use of the true power. right? That's also something he did.
Oh, yeah, because the true power is, I mean, it's the power of entropy, so I guess you could categorize that as violent, like at a very fundamental level.
And the darker, right? The more terrible, right? He's used that. It's touched him. That violence has touched him. The violence of the Dark One.
That's a good question. Would Huron smell a president that signed for a nuclear strike? Does that count as the violence that would transcend to Huron's smell sense? Or if all you did was calmly write on a piece of paper, then you didn't do any violence, according to his sense.
Is it just the person who drops the bomb? Is it just the person who builds the bomb? Who has responsibility? What if you have a drone and you have a drone operator? Do you just smell where the bomb was dropped? Does the bunker where the people who are sitting and dropping bombs on people smell of violence? I feel like it would, because there's people sitting in there all day watching and dropping bombs. That's like the people are doing the violence, even if the violence is happening elsewhere.
Yeah, I guess the question is, what is the magical mechanic that is generating what Huron is smelling? Is he smelling the trauma done to your own soul when you commit violence? Right? Is it like the Tinker thing where it's like, if you do violence, you are like harming yourself? Like, is that actually what Huron is smelling, is like the harm done to you by the act? Because then, yeah, I think signing a piece of paper would count. But if it's like, you know, less navel-gazy than that, then maybe not.
Vuji is saying, could he smell a noble that arranged for an assassination?
Yeah, for a more in-world example.
Yeah, for a more in-world example, right? Like, that's something he could actually smell.
I feel like in the books, it's like he would smell the assassin.
Yeah, he smells the act of violence. I feel like there has to be an act involved, right?
Yeah.
And so a stabbing of a knife,
pushing a button doesn't count.
See, that's
the question we're getting to.
That's the question.
Does pushing a button count? Is it about how proximate you are to the act? Because that's where the drone thing comes into play, right? It's the whole like, well,
in the same way that is pulling back an arrow and shooting a bow, right? Because you're remote and like
that takes a lot more skill.
Yeah, but it's, the same thing. Like the arrow impacts them at a distance from where you are. You pushed a button, a signal was communicated, in this case, a signal of mass rather than a signal of electronics. But then there's an impact and the person dies, right? Like you're far.
So does Huron smell ranged weapons?
And I feel like he has to, right? Like he has to smell.
Yeah.
Yeah. But where does he smell it? Does he smell it where the bowman is, or would he smell it where the people are getting shot and injured?
I feel like he would smell a bowman. I feel like that, like if he's like in Faldara and someone shoots an arrow and Huron like runs around and like finds the person who shot the arrow, like I feel like that's a scenario that makes sense.
Right, because I feel like he's smelling two different things, right? He's smelling the violence itself, and then the person, it sticks to the person as they move around as well and fades over time. So he smells both the sights and the trail of the person where they go. So I feel like he smells both.
So yeah, it's just how far back up the chain does it go? I think it has to be the person who actually pushes the button. If you write the order, you're not going to trigger Huron. But if you're the one who pushes the button, no matter how far away the act happens, the button pusher is going to be the one who smells that.
I agree. You can't just say you were obeying orders. You still did the violence.
Right, exactly. Literally, we as a civilization did decide that following orders is not an excuse. We did decide that, despite what some people apparently think. Still, in the year of our Lord 2025.
Which doesn't mean you are immune from prosecution because you gave the orders, right? Like, it's still an evil act. Yeah.
But we're talking about Huron here, not international law. Huron is a slightly more specific thing.
Right.
Yeah.
He smells the acts of violence, right? And then some of the violence, there's a few examples where the violence is so corrupt and so damaging and influenced by so much evil, he smells something on top of that.
Yeah, and I do think that touching the true power probably is factoring into it, but the Natrans Barrow thing has got to be just really massive. There's no other mechanic in the world that could kill as many people at the same time. Right? Like there's nothing else.
I don't know.
In their world, they've only just figured out prototype cannons.
Oh, I think the one power. I think not necessarily balefire, but the one power for sure.
Oh, sure. Well, I was thinking of the mundane world, the mundane, regular world of normal armies and kings and stuff. Like, they don't have weapons anywhere near that catastrophic. So, it's going to stand out to hear and sense, is what I'm saying.
Other than somebody's like the White Cloaks lining up villages of people and just cutting throats, like one after the other, right? Like,
yeah, that would be comparable. It would still take longer, but yeah, just like actual mass murder. What the White Cloaks are capable of. I believe it.
absolutely, 100%. And we see them doing it, right? Like, there are villages that are emptied out because of the White Cloaks. And like, we never get that POV, but like, there's empty villages that were used to be full of people that aren't anymore because the White Cloaks were there.
Yeah. I do assume they took a lot of people to be
Oh, I don't.
indentured servants.
No, because isn't there one where like they're trying to travel in secret and like it's the questioners, but they just wipe out a whole village just to keep them quiet. And Bernhold's like, we could have gone around.
Yeah, that happened. Anyway. So Huron and Rand have the negotiations where Huron does not get to have a reunion with Rand. He simply has to operate as the mouthpiece of the Borderlanders and receive Rand's wrath as a result.
Which is basically, he says, well, first of all, Rand's like, well, I don't get angry, and then proceeds to get incredibly irate and angry that the Borderlanders are in Farmatting. So yeah, I don't get angry. Yeah, you do. Yeah,
Nynaeve even has a thought at one point, like, what's up with this anger, or whatever he wants to call it? Like, whatever he's calling it, I'm calling it anger. He can call it something else. Which, mood.
So, and then so once he finds out that they're in Farmatting, he just basically cuts off Huron and is like, peace out. I'm going to go there. And we get the double gateway insta hop. I saw you roll your eyes the second I said that. Oh man. Yeah, no, it's both one of the most clever and most infuriating things that Sanderson does, which is just like, he OPs gateways instantly.
Which, like, to be fair, Robert Jordan did set up the rules to be broken that way. It is there on the page. This is one of Sanderson's great strengths, is thinking way too hard about how the magic system could work, but like, it just feels like suddenly we've got technology whiz-bangs in my fantasy. Like, the magic was supposed to be like arcane and difficult, not clever.
And like, it feels like, okay, so we're just gonna, end of Game of Thrones, people got really upset because characters were teleporting all over the place and weren't traveling real distances. And now just in story, it's like, okay, we're just going to ignore distances from now on, and our characters can appear anywhere at any time with no cooldown and no penalty.
Yeah, it's when you start to get into the higher levels in your D&D campaign and you just have like god powers and more actions per turn than you know what to do with.
And it's like, skimming was enough. We didn't need this.
It really was.
Like, I would have rather see him just skim there and be like, let's go. Like, there's not that many people.
Right, it's not like it's that far away. Like, oh.
Right.
Yeah, no, I thought skimming was a fine mechanic, and then gateways for when you want to be fancy. Like, this whole, ooh, look at me, I'm so clever, is just like, is skimming not good enough for kids these days?
So, and this whole like, I never thought of that. Okay, Nynaeve, right? Like, I should have thought. It feels almost like Sanderson's saying like, aren't I so clever? Even Nynaeve didn't think of this.
Yeah, and I'm like, yes, you're a very clever boy. Now sit down and continue writing. Like, whatever. I don't know.
Do you think it comes from the voice in his head, LTT, or do you think it's just, I think it's Rand being clever?
Yeah, I think it's just Sanderson making Rand more clever than he's been before. And also, Rand has historically been a kind of clever person, and like, he was paired with Egwene for a long time, and she is very clever. Like, it's not out of character for them to just think about a thing and come up with a new way of doing it. But I think it's mostly Sanderson self-inserting.
Yeah, I mean, Egwene discovered how to travel basically completely independently.
Yeah, from first principles and just tinkering and thinking, she figured it out. So I'm not surprised that Rand's mind might also idly think about how to make traveling more efficient while he's, just in the shower or whatever. Shower thoughts.
Because I believe we had Jordan setting up that you don't need to learn the area to make short gateways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said that.
And I think he also said that making a gateway helps you learn it. Like, if you've made a gateway to a place, like making that gateway in that same location helps you get back out again, right? So both of those things were true, but I wish it just helped. I wish it lowered the cooldown, not made it instant.
Yeah.
I wish he still had to sit there for like 20 minutes or something like that, you know?
Brooding.
Yeah.
Marinating.
Mm-hmm. Holding the gateway open from the last place or something.
Right, yeah. But no, that's not what we get.
No, we get instant travel, which is, again, not out of the realm, and it's fine, especially when you got this battle coming up, and it's just like, okay, we're not gonna have to worry about the cooldowns. We're just gonna let them teleport anywhere, and if it's something where it wouldn't have worked, we're gonna have them do a short hop first, and then just ignore the rest of the rules.
Right, yeah. And Huron gets, a ride back, basically, which is cool. He doesn't have a long ride back because, they go much closer, so that way they can overlook the army, which is encamped around the city, but within the boundary of the Guardian, right? Formatting, essentially. It's kind of like Nynaeve thinks about how the island itself looks kind of like Tarvalin, and I think it kind of looks like Tarvalin under siege, because it's got the city and then the river and then an army immediately on the other side. Only in this case, obviously, it's not a siege, it's just camping on their front yard.
And that pisses Rand off. I mean, remember, he got captured by Formatting, right? And was like, Codswain had to come get him out, and that was right before he cleansed the source. Like, that he did not have a good time. He was put back in prison. That was definitely...
In a tiny prison cell. It was very triggering.
Super triggering. He couldn't channel, right? Like, this whole, they're trying to put me back in a box. I don't want to let anyone else have power over me, right? By taking away the one power, you are essentially taking away, he could go in with enough armies that it wouldn't be a problem, but I think he's very much worried about. There's also a area in Formatting where men can't channel and women can.
Yeah, that's the ring that the army is currently camped in.
Yeah.
Where the 13 Aes Sedai that are with the Borderlanders are located, right? Why would Rand go into that zone with 13 Aes Sedai? Why?
Who can channel, and he wouldn't be able to. Yeah, that's crazy.
Right. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. I mean, I can see where he's not prone to take this willingly. Like, obviously as Zen Rand, he does whatever. But, like, a reasonable person would be like, I'm a little sketched out right now.
But you also see why the Borderlanders do it, because they are commanded, they're told, hey, you need to kill this man if he can't answer the question correctly. And they're like, well, how the fuck do we do that? Well, we need him in a trap. We need him in a place where we can actually stop him. So I get why they set it up, but I get also why he's not willing to go in. It is a place of ambush.
It is a box. He is correct to identify it as a box.
And he goes to, he pulls out the Choden Call, which starts to glow, right? And he's like, oh, I'm not going to hurt the city. The city's fine. I'm just going to destroy the fucking armies. Which is like, no, you're going to the last battle. These are the Borderlanders. You cannot come down on the armies with lightning and fire. First of all, they're innocent people. Second of all, they're on your side and you need them to fight the Trollocs. Like, you cannot do this, Rand. This is crazy.
Yeah, you can't murder huge swaths of your own allies that you desperately need because 12 people have miscommunicated in an email. Like, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, it's a completely disproportionate response. Like, yes, these are armies that have loyalty and a license to do violence, and you need them. Why would you kill them just because their rulers have not been properly clear with you about their mysterious prophecy? Like, totally disproportionate. Doc, you hit reply all as your fault for ending the world. Not the reply all. No.
You're bringing down the server. It can't handle the traffic. And stop replying to all, saying stop replying to all. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Take me off this list, please.
Please. Yeah, so Rand is seriously considering some ridiculous war crimes, and Nynaeve is like, will you please not do that? Like, please, for the sake of all that is reasonable, would you please not do war crimes? It's so uncool right now.
And she's like, I wish that had melted away like the female half, which reminds you, A, that's what happened to the female half and why she doesn't have like a comparative power. And B, it's like, yeah, he really doesn't use this for anything important until he destroys it on the mountaintop, right? Like, this is done. Kalendor is the thing he needs for the last battle. He does not need the Choden Call, right? That is not the item that's going to help him win because it's not about power. It's about having the ability to channel the true power, right? Because the true power is the thing that allows him to seal off the Dark One essentially turning his own, stop hitting yourself. Essentially, he takes the Dark One's hand and punches him in his face with his own hand, right? Like that's what being able to channel and control the true power and turn that against the Dark One, because it's like, go ahead and corrupt it. It's your own hand.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If you bite the hand that punches you, that's okay, because you're just biting yourself.
And then what he's doing is grabbing that hand with Sidar and Sidene, right? And like using that to wall everything off. So like, yeah.
But yeah, he needs the Chodan call to cleanse the source and then to cleanse his soul. Right. That's what the Chodan call is really there for, is to give him that temptation that he is able to destroy on the mountaintop. It really is a focal item in that last Veins of Gold ritual, so to speak.
And the Chodan call was created to cleanse the source, right? That seems to have been its whole purpose in being created.
Wasn't it created to do something in the War of Power and then it never got used? We don't know. Yeah,
I think it was just, an ultimate weapon against the dark side.
But it was built before the taint existed.
Yes. And my understanding is the Chodan Call, the building of them, was the threat that pushed the dark side to start winning, because they were so afraid of them. They essentially, and then because they were winning, LTT did his final strike. But it was really basically like the Chodan Call escalated to the point where like it was endgame for both sides.
So that's why they never got used, was because both sides finished their knockout fight before the thing could actually come into play. Huh. Interesting. So something to do with dealing with the Dark One in a really intrinsic way was clearly the point, even though the taint didn't literally exist. But it was an appropriate scale problem to point the Chodan Call at, because that is just the Dark One's like corruption in the world getting purged.
Yeah, Seven Asai says the dark side took over the territory they were being built in. And I guess my headcanon is they took over that territory because they were being built there. And that was the surge that led to the dark side, because the dark side was winning, right? When Rand did his strike on Shale Ghul, they were losing the battle. So, my headcanon is like it was this like the light was building the Chodan Call that forced the dark side to push into territory they hadn't done before. They took the Chodan Call. That caused the light side to start losing, which forced the strike on Shale Ghul. Is sort of how my headcanon goes in terms of the sequence of events.
Right, because we don't have a lot to go on. And with the parallels to World War II and also Star Wars, like, it's probably it's fine to headcanon that those patterns from art and history may apply here as well.
Damn it, we got the Death Star plans. We have to escape with it. Anyway.
Look, Western writers have one story that they're constantly chasing the dragon on.
We talk about Moonlight, which is Nynaeve's horse, this is the only mention of that horse. I think it's really there just to be like, Bella's a better horse. Where is she? Yeah,
she gets mentioned like 3 or 4 times throughout this chapter as like part of Nynaeve's like increasing irritation with her whole situation of just like, okay, this horse is too mild. This horse isn't right. I need a better horse. I need a horse like Bella. Bella's a good horse. Like it's almost like Egwene's chair in terms of just like being a little thread in the background, but I don't think it's for anything to do with Nynaeve. I think it's just there to remind us that Bella is the best horse.
I think it's just a little fan service. I think it's a little nod to the fact that like Bella is the creator and everybody loves her, and like, where has she been? Because like she's not mentioned for a couple of books, and then Sanderson's like, oh yeah, she's hanging out in the White Tower or in the Rebel camp stables.
Yeah, she's fine, but she hasn't had some page time in a while, so a mention of her is good. We need these crumbs.
Mention of Tam, a little foreshadowing. My feet started on this path the moment Tam found me crying on that mountain. Just like, maybe Tam can divert you from that path as well.
Yeah, maybe Tam needs to be there with you at the end because he was there at the beginning.
So she begs him not to kill them, and he acquiesces. He's like, oh, all right, fine, I won't kill them today. Like, and then he sends Huron back with, join me or be left behind. I don't give a shit, whichever one you want to do.
Which is a good threat. It's a better threat than join me or die, because this actually pricks at what the Borderlanders most want,
their
which
honor.
Is to protect the Borderlands. Yeah, their honor, exactly.
Huron stayed behind. He looked shaken. His reunion with Lord Rand had obviously been far from what he expected. Me too, Huron. Me too.
Yeah, all of us are with you, Huron. We all hurt for you in this moment.
And I feel like that's almost why he did it, is to be like, yeah, Rand's a dick. He's going to be a dick to Huron. And so you can sort of feel that, like, strangeness. Because you're like, man, that feels really bad.
Yeah, as a reader, you're like, but this isn't the Rand that we've been with. This is a different, darker, we need to fix kind of Rand now. Because Huron is like, we all feel good for Huron. Huron's like the human cast equivalent of Bella. Like, he's perfect. He can do nothing wrong. You know, and Rand just treated him like he was completely wrong. And yeah, it was a good choice on Sanderson's part. I just wish RJ had done more in the meantime.
I guess as thanks for that, Rand gives her the thing she asked for earlier. Because I think there is part of him that's relieved he didn't do that, right? Like, there's part of Rand that didn't want to kill his allies.
But yeah, because he is still Rand inside with all these defense mechanisms. He is Rand under all that.
So he tells her that the statue, he describes a statue that's near where Perrin is. And we find that's on the road between Johanna and Lugard.
Yep.
Sort of about halfway there, sort of in Murandy, kind of south of Whitebridge.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's very close to where Perrin met Elias and met Gnome and all of that stuff. We're back in that part of the world in general.
So Gillidan, Murandy, Altara, they all kind of overlap in this little area where the road cuts through them. And they're just on the other side of the two rivers, right? There's this giant wall forest of shadows that separates the road they're on from the two rivers, but they're actually geographically pretty close.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, this was one of those parts where when I was first reading through these, I was like, oh, so the timelines have like gone flying off in wildly different directions because Perrin is nowhere near a statue like that. Like this description here, when I was reading it the first time, I'm like, but Perrin's nowhere near a statue like that. So either Rand is lying or Perrin, we have a lot of backtracking on the timeline to catch up with Perrin. And like, now I know we do. But yeah, I remember reading it the first time being like, I would remember if Perrin was near a statue like that. Excuse me. When will he get to a statue like that?
You're right. That's going to give us a time sink later, right? Like,
yes. When he gets to that statue, then oh, we're catching up with the end of Gathering Storm. Cool.
So that's a pretty good timestamp. And there's a couple of visions like that. Codswain names the statue. She said it's a Mahan Rukan, Old Tongue name, but there's no parts of that appear in the Old Tongue dictionary as any other words. So I don't have a good translation for that, as far as I can tell. There's no indication of the translation and no apparent clues from other known words in the Old Tongue, according to Encyclopedia Watt.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, and isn't it, she describes it as a statue that never actually got finished. It's a partially completed statue. So there's some unfinished Old Tongue comprehension construction, I guess.
The Old Tongue has never been finished either as a language, I don't think.
Apparently.
Jordan was not a linguist.
So, yeah, we've gone back to Tyr. That's where we are now. And it's super toasty. Nynaeve thinks about how she shouldn't be wearing wool because the servants all look cooler in linen.
Yeah, linen's great.
Linen is great. She thinks about Matt and how she embarrassed herself in front of the Daughter of the Nine Moons by defending him, which I think it's cute that she sprang to Matt's defense ahead of her own, like, thoughts. Like, she just defended Matt and then after the fact was like, oh no, I made a total fool of myself. But, like, that's how much you care about Matt, Nynaeve. And she thinks about how she feels bad about abandoning him under a wall in Ebu Dar, which, like, yes, you should feel bad about that.
Yeah, but she had to flee with the kin and all that kind of stuff because of the Shan-Chan, right? She would have been captured.
I know, but she should still feel bad about it. Both things can be true.
And I think her defending Matt to the Empress, to Tuon, was one of the greatest moments of Nynaeve, right? We cheered that at the moment. So like her feeling shame about that.
It's a wonderful moment. It's cute that she's embarrassed.
Yeah, exactly. And it's totally just embarrassment of like, oh, I hope he's like actually not being a scoundrel, because if I defended him and he went off and was a scoundrel, I'm going to be super embarrassed. It's like vouching for somebody at work and later finding out they were like stealing from the company and being like, ooh, uh-oh.
I can't imagine. That would be really weird.
One thing I want to talk about is the rain.
The rain.
So they left, and when they returned, there was a wet scent to the air, a smell of new rain, and she could feel that she'd missed a sprinkle. Not enough to clear the air or muddy the ground, but enough to leave a wetted sections of stone and shaded corners. So one of the issues with this constant overcastness is that it never actually rains, right? It's overcast, but it's not raining. But while they're gone, there's a sprinkle. And I was trying to find some meaning to that, and I really couldn't, or symbolism to it, and I really couldn't. But it feels like if the dragon's away, maybe there's a chance of normal weather. Or maybe there was like some tears falling with him like almost destroying the Borderlanders, or just Sanderson forgot that it wasn't supposed to rain.
Well, it didn't rain very much, so it doesn't
No,
count really.
It doesn't really count. It's just a little sprinkle. But yeah, I thought one of the issues with this constant overcastness is that they're not rain clouds. They're storm clouds, and the storm is coming.
I wonder if that means that the atmosphere is slowly accumulating more and more water, like as the land is drying out. Like,
well, think about it. Like, what makes air able to absorb more moisture? Heat, right? And so heat and energy, and so you have all the energy of the Dark One coming and the twisting of the pattern, and yeah. You don't necessarily need to follow physical laws anymore because this is the Dark One corrupting things. So like moisture and energy could be accumulating in the atmosphere and building and building and building way beyond when it would be reasonable physically for that to keep building.
yeah, which then means that there could be some really catastrophic storms that are going to get unleashed around the world as the Dark One's control of things slips, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be a lot of rebalancing.
Those storms are also mirroring what's going on inside of Rand as the pressure is building and he's pushing down that anger. That's just like, right, we're waiting for the storm to erupt, which is his anger, and he's just pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down, and it builds and builds and builds and builds. And so maybe we saw a little bit of a release of that, right? A little bit of
He
little
did
bit of
lose
emotion.
a little bit of control. Yeah.
He did lose a little bit of control. He did let them live, right? So there's just that little bit of sprinkle of rain that came out, just that little bit of release of emotion that happened. That's the best I got.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I'll take it.
Min is avoiding Rand, right? Because Min feels embarrassed. She feels like a liability. So she is letting him... She's hanging out with Codswain, basically.
Yeah. Nynaeve goes to find Cadswain because, she has this information and, looks at Min and is just like, yeah, being around Rand is hard, even if you're not his partner, but being his partner, it must be really tough. So I guess, Cadswain is better company.
We get a little backstory about how Nynaeve's room was totally cut off from, she's like,
Yeah.
oh, I guess I had to escape using a gateway. And she doesn't consider that like other people might be stuck in rooms that are totally cut off and like dying of thirst and like
right?
they don't have like, couldn't you like maybe think about that and reflect on it? She's like, I was mildly inconvenienced. I had a gateway. And it's like, yeah, you can channel. Imagine all the people who couldn't.
Yeah, that was my thought too, was like, how many people are dying because they got stuck in rooms without doors and the hallways didn't shift back before they died of thirst?
Or got stuck in rooms that just don't exist anymore. Right? Like,
Yeah, or turned into a wall.
There's no guarantee the Dark One doesn't just eliminate you, right?
Yeah. And the fact that she doesn't think about the implications is just like, mild inconvenience. Good thing I have a gateway. It's like, but, okay.
I think in a lot of ways it's like climate change. It's happening all around us and we're all doing everything we know how to do to solve the problem, but the problem is bigger than us individually, and so we just sort of live with it. And when it inconveniences us, we do what we can to walk around it, right?
Yeah.
We turn on our AC if it gets too hot outside and just keep living our lives. If something floods, we no longer have insurance in Florida and we just keep living our lives. Like
We can do better.
yeah, if something burns down, we just let the community burn down and don't rebuild there, or we do, because we have forest fires on this coast on a regular yearly basis now.
Deserve so much better from our society.
So, it's not so much that we are adapting to climate change as we're just kind of working around it.
Suffering through it while other people die first.
Right.
Very honorable.
And I think there's something similar going on here, right?
Sure. No, Nynaeve is trying to save the world 3 different ways at the same time. I can see where maybe she doesn't have the brain space to think about scullery maids getting stuck in doorless rooms.
Right.
But still, I would have liked the omnipresent narrator to spend a little time on it.
Yeah, or at least think about that. Like, thank God she had gateways. Thank the creator she had gateways because, maybe just a line about like how maybe this is where some of the missing people have gone.
That would have been a good line. Maybe some of the disappearances could be explained through this. She should talk to someone about that, and that would have been a good way to solve that. One line. We could have afforded that. We really are on a rewrite bender today.
We really are. Yeah, with this chapter.
Yeah.
It just feels like a lot of wasted potential. That's all. Like this particular plot line, right, leading up to him having his revelation, feel like the whole like, oh, your father's here and you almost killed him, therefore you need to go on this like mind bender thing. Like there's so many different ways to approach that. And I don't think that Tam, it was an emotional moment, but it doesn't for me make the most sense plot wise.
Yeah. Hence the desire to rewrite everything.
And there's other ways to get that emotional moment with him while having other things leading up to the breaking moment.
Yeah. So Cadsuane praises Nynaeve, and Nynaeve gets mad at herself for feeling pleased at the praise. But have you seen how many compliments Cadsuane has handed out? We are still counting on one hand. Right. So it is actually worth being pretty proud of yourself that you got a gold star from Cadsuane.
Yeah, but in a lot of ways, I see it as a parallel to the way the Seanchan trained the Damane, which is punish them constantly and only occasionally give them praise, and then the praise feels amazing.
Yeah, that is Cadsuane's sort of bullying tactic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great. It is effective, but it's not great. I think we're supposed to see the parallel with Adalorna and Egwene, right? Where Adalorna is surprised that she feels good that Egwene is like, wow, you're so strong, like in the aftermath of losing her warders during the battle and all that. And she's like, why did this person make me feel, but like the dynamic is totally different here because Cadsuane is the elder one who's supposed to be in charge. So yeah, but it's great proof that Cadsuane is very effective with her bullying, or not effective, accomplished. She's a high level bullier. She's good at what she does.
And the way I see it also is that Nynaeve respects Cadsuane and therefore respects advice from her.
I mean, that's what it really means, is you don't get pride from compliments from people you don't respect.
Right.
No matter what she says, she's feeling pride, therefore there's respect.
And so she demands to know the whole plan before she reveals where Perrin is.
Right, just like Rand was cagey about handing the information over, she is then going to try to sell the information for the highest bid.
And then what kind of follows is a whole philosophical debate about whether or not they can depend on Min's visions in the future, because like Corell, who's one of Cadsuane's Aes Sedai, who's like hanging out, is like, oh, we know we've already won because Min's having visions about the future that happened after the last battle. So for those visions to come true, which they have to, that means we have to win the last battle. And Cadsuane's like, yeah, except it's really sort of Min can see what's happening on the film, but if someone burns the theater to the ground, it doesn't matter what was on the film.
Technically, Min's the one that makes that argument, and Cadsuane just backs her up.
Well, okay.
Because Min is not a sexy lamp. Min is a PhD thesis student.
Yes, Min, you're right. Min does make that argument first and basically says it doesn't matter what I can see if there's, no pattern for that to occur on.
Right. Yeah. It's like her power exists while the pattern exists. It doesn't cut off at a certain point. It just won't exist if it doesn't exist. It's very simple.
I feel like all of her post last battle prophecies have to be started with, if we win the last battle, then blah, 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 blah. Right. They're all conditional, kind of the way that like she had a couple of other conditional prophecies, 2 that we know of. Right. There's the Suan, Gareth Bryn, and there was another one.
Egwene and Gowan, the 2 paths.
That's right. And so like I feel like there's this 2-path one too that's like, one goes to a null, which is the Dark One winning and the end of everything, and the other is, assuming that is not true, follow this loop.
Yeah, exactly. And we also have sort of here like a scene, it's almost like a repeat of the Natron's Barrow revelation, where Nynaeve's like, oh yeah, so he almost did Natron's Barrow again. Like, because they're like, oh yeah, did he take it the Borderlander proposition was? Did he take it well? Well, he almost did war crimes, and that's why I have information. And then Cadsuane gets to iterate again. Her goal is to make Rand laugh. Iterating it again for us as the audience, that Cadsuane is here to help Rand. Nynaeve's like, oh, I won't let you hurt him. She's like, well, why would you think I want to hurt him? I want to make him learn how to laugh again.
Because of all the history that you have with him. That's why.
Right, exactly. But that's why she has to say it out loud, is because her actions do not communicate that clearly. She has to say it with her words in order for us to know what her actual goals are. Because her actions don't look like trying to make him laugh. So then, Nynaeve is like, I literally can't bargain with this information. Like, it's literally too important. Even though she wants to bargain for it, like she tries, and then they have this whole back and forth, and she has to sell for exactly the price that Cadsuane asked.
Yeah, but when she gives the information, she gets the information, right? Like,
right, yeah, it's a little bit of a positive bait and switch there.
Right. It's like, I'm not going to tell you until you get the information. Well, I'm not giving you the information until you tell me. Okay, well, fine. Here. Like, why did the order matter so much? It's power play between the two of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's because it's two powerful women doing pecking order things. And now I got the readout. That's it.
I think that's where we are, yeah.
Okay. Rand had to change for Lan, for them all. And she had no idea what to do other than, unfortunately, to trust Cadsuane. Nynaeve swallowed her pride and spoke. Do you know the location of a statue of an enormous sword fallen to the earth as if stabbing it? Corell and Maurice glanced at each other in confusion. The hand of Amun Rukan. Cadsuane turned from Min with a raised eyebrow. The full statue is never finished, from what scholars can tell. It rests near the Johanna Road. Perrin is camping in its shadow. Cadsuane pursed her lips. I assumed he would go eastward, towards land Althor had captured. She took a deep breath. All right, we are going for him right now. She hesitated, then glanced at Nynaeve. In answer to your question earlier, child, Perrin actually isn't important to our plans. He isn't? Nynaeve asked. But, Cadsuane raised a finger. There are people with him who are vital. One in particular. And,
That's Tam, as we know. And just in case you were wondering, someone asked Brandon Sanderson what what the name of the statue means. Response: stares blankly for a long moment. What's been said on it before? It's a sword sticking out of the earth. Cadsuane names it. Right. I don't know. You can probably tell something about it from that.
Wow.
But it's not important. Brandon Sanderson laughs again.
Wow. Okay. All right.
So it appears to be a name pulled out of a hat for a statue on a road so that we can pinpoint Perrin.
It was the end of the day and he had deadlines.
I mean, yeah, I don't expect him to remember every name of everything that he ever pulled out. He was asked that question at a con. He probably didn't remember writing that scene. There may be something in the notes, right? But like he didn't have them on him at the time. So I'm not going to say it has no meaning.
I got Origins of the Wheel of Time right here. Let me try to look it up. See if there's anything in it.
There's nothing. It confirms there's nothing other than what's in the books. Yeah.
Well, that's a missed opportunity. Oh well. That's fine. So this was fun-ish, I guess. We did a lot of bitching about how the books were written.
We did. We did a lot of rewriting, but I think I do think this is a little bit of a missed opportunity where you could have had so many more threads coming together. And I've never been a huge fan of the Tam reveal that triggers. I love Veins of Gold. Not so much big a fan of like, I have daddy issues, therefore Veins of Gold.
Yeah.
I just feel like there could have been other triggers.
No, Rand didn't have many other triggers to work with. He was a pretty well-adjusted person. There was really only his daddy issues to work with.
Which is like the one thing he didn't have was daddy issues.
I know,
like his dad was
right?
actually a really good dude. Like other than trying to live up to the expectations and failing, right? Like that's the best.
Well, and learning that he was adopted. Like
Yeah.
in the middle of a bunch of others. He had a little bit of dad issues, but like they weren't long lasting and intrinsic to his personality. They were very recent.
And it's like, no, I've got a good dad. And he like very quickly settled on like, no, Tam was my dad. Like he raised me. He was a good dad. Like I don't think
Veins of Gold is daddy issues.
I don't either.
It's more, it's kind of like what happened with Huron, really, is it's being faced with someone who remembers you before you became this broken version of yourself, and like being faced with someone who knew you back when you were a normal human being is quite
shows you the changes,
traumatizing and difficult. And it's not daddy issues. It's just his dad is the person who can hold that mirror up the most clearly.
Right. Yeah. And I see the symbolism of coming back together, right? He was the abandonment. He hasn't seen them since the Eye of the World. When he left them, didn't even really get to say goodbye. And the way that sort of uncertainty around his past comes back around and he gets it confirmed, right? Like there's something to that. It's just it feels like there was more that could have been done. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I don't like it either. It just, again, I think words need to mean things, and I think daddy issues is separate from whatever Rand and Tam have going on.
Well, I'm talking about like Rand and Jonduin, right? Like
yeah. But Janduin doesn't come into that scene. It's Tam that comes into that scene. So
yeah. I was gonna say, I think that my problem with it is it reads like he has daddy issues, and he doesn't.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. But we'll continue to bitch about it. We'll keep working our hypotheses and figure it all out by the time we get there.
For sure.
Oh, that's
for sure.
next week, isn't it?
It's coming up real soon. Yeah.
Oh. Okay. I guess we don't have very long to workshop and bitch about it.
No, we really don't. Thanks for the sympathy, Nemtalk. For recording, I did get in a small accident. I'm fine. My car will probably be fine.
Yeah, the arm sling has nothing to do with the car wreck.
The arm sling is because I swam for 20 years, wrecked my rotator cuff, and then my dog yanked on the leash and just caught me in a bad place. And so I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure there's no tendon damage that's permanent up in there with scarring. It's American healthcare. I don't need to know. I don't want to know. Right? Yeah, it's like the rotator cuff. It's for when I rotate my arm around, but it turns out if you do that a few million times, those little rubber bands called tendons wear out and tend to tear.
Yeah. My biological father ruined his rotator cuff lifting heavy objects over his head in grocery stores, or bread trays and bags of wheat and stuff. And then my stepfather fucked up his rotator cuffs lifting heavy things over his head as a contractor. Bags of cement and ladders and drywall. And I'm keeping my arms down.
If I'll be honest, the time that I think I actually tore it was not when I was swimming. It's when I was working out in the weight room after practice, and I was doing military press, which is lifting weight directly up over your head. And that's when I felt the pop. And it's been, it's gotten better, but it's, that's the one time where I felt like I was injured. And then I had a couple of weeks where I really couldn't use it. And then the injury's always been fine since then, but it does, if I move it in the wrong way, it does hurt. So
yeah, my chronic back pain is closer to my spine. I have the quintessential under the shoulder blade knot thing that's hurt ever since an injury in middle school.
Right.
Not my shoulders, it's my back proper, but
It's so funny how these little like childhood injuries really, or not only childhood, young person injuries that you think you've healed from, you don't.
Yeah.
I think it's why old people are always like, be careful with your body, because it's like they're in their 40s and 50s going, man, I wish I hadn't injured myself
right
when I was younger, because I'm feeling it now.
But also, like, my injury was from me trying to do high jump. I was in PE. And I knew what I was doing, and I just fucked up one high jump, and like this rib popped out, got like dislocated or whatever. I had a chiropractor like put it back, and it's been prone towards more injuries like that a couple of times. And then I was playing cello for years and like, I guess hyperextending my back or something, and just like, and now I, edit with my right hand, and it's just like there's that repetitive chronic stress injury that's all still going back to that one point that I remember fucking up that one beautiful June day in middle school doing the fucking high jump.
It's why it's so funny when I see people in fantasy like get injured or get stabbed and they like recover from it in a week and they never mention it again. It's like, no. That's chronic pain for the rest of your life. You don't just get better from that. That's not something. The one thing I've been re-listening to the Dresden Files because sometimes it's good background noise. And one of my favorite little plot points in there is that the thing that makes wizards and makes them long-lived and the ability to like last for hundreds of years without dying is that they can basically heal from anything. Not fast, but like their body never stops healing. So eventually scar tissue goes away.
That's cool.
And so it's like they're like, you've taken so much damage. You should be like a punch-drunk wrestler or a boxer, right? That you've taken so many hits to the head, but it doesn't bother you because you just eventually actually fully heal.
God. Now that seems like a thing we could actually try to figure out how to unlock in the human genome with a little gene editing from like the lizard regeneration, whatever, Like, no, not miraculous healing, just never stops healing.
Right. The only issue with that is that's also the definition of cancer.
Healing? No, cancer is cell division.
Yeah,
that's different
cell growth,
than healing.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
but healing is a measure of cell division, right? Like you are creating new tissue through cell division, and
yeah, but you're getting rid of the old shit too.
It's interesting to me that like, yeah, there is a link between cell division and growth and cancer, right? It's very hard to have one without the other.
Now I've been reading Song of the Cell. I think I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, and it's so deep into a level of nerdery that I just don't know how to follow. But like, this person's a very compelling writer. The way that we understand how cells work and how they work and all the different kinds of cells and what they do and how when those things go wrong, you get different diseases and illnesses and cancers is just like, it's very hard for me to follow, but I keep trying to treat it like a fantasy world, and I'm just learning the world building. And it's like, okay, like the house of this does that with they have an alliance like this, It's like, I can learn fantasy worlds. Why can't I learn cell biology if it's written?
Because they're not narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. That's why.
Yeah, seriously. But this author, I'm forgetting his name, but the author he's very good. He like switches between like really deep cell biology and like very human stories and like keeps the dynamic going back and forth really well to make it make sense. Like I just listened to the chapter about AIDS, and like as he's like, so then in the 80s this weird illness came up. I'm like, oh, we're doing AIDS. That's where we're going. And sure enough, the next hour is like, here's how we discovered from the symptoms and worked backwards, like what AIDS was and like how it fucks up the body. It's so weird, so fascinating. And I have not read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, but I am aware of HeLa cells. My dad told me that the book was a lot about the legal fight over them and less about the science of the HeLa cells. Like that was like a much smaller part of the narrative, so I haven't gotten around to it. But
because the science is relatively simple, you can list all the things they've accomplished, but it's like, oh yeah, these are cancer cells that can live forever, and so we can test out all these treatments on them and duplicate them, and they're really easy to do that on, and they don't die in a petri dish.
Yeah. So, and I mean, and the book title says it, right? It's about the life of Henrietta Lacks and less about the science that she made possible. But
there is some interesting, like, oh, she's kind of immortal, right? Her cells live on forever.
Yeah. Like she, in a sense, is still going. Like, what? It's kind of weird. Especially with the part where she didn't consent to it. That part's extra weird.
But, I subscribe more to the we are information patterns rather than the cells and the DNA necessarily that make us up. And so when the pattern of our body disintegrates, we don't really exist anymore.
Unless you subscribe to the theory that information cannot be destroyed.
Yeah, but just because the information that you existed cannot be destroyed doesn't mean that you yourself like continue as an entity, right?
I don't know. I've just read some sci-fi where that was kind of the crux of the
totally
cosmological thing they were wrestling with. That's all I know. I don't have a strong take. I just know it's a theory, or not a theory, but a sandbox.
I think that's one of those things where like people take the saying, which is like a kind of a misunderstanding and a twisting of like information theory, and make it like, oh, there could be an afterlife because you are information and information can't be destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's a logical extension for artists to make
Totally,
from
100%.
that
100%.
edge. It's like that's what artists do. You know, they take those edges of reality and they say, but what if a little deus ex machina in there?
It's the spin of an electron is the thing we can't get rid of. Like the electrons can scatter all over the place, and the organization that keeps them together take constant energy input, and entropy can fuck that up and no problem, right? Like entropy will get you. Don't worry.
Oh man, I watched one of the most I don't usually get existentially depressed from watching science videos, but I watched one about how the entire history of the universe as we know it is like a very short part of the overall timeline.
Oh, totally.
And like the actual timeline goes all the way down to like protons falling apart in like 1 trillion billion years or something. And I just like, I am not normally existentially depressed by science, but that one fucking hurt. It was like, because I think of it as like the universe as we know it will like, you know, do a big crunch or a big rip or something and like reset and start over, Wheel of Time like. And this was just like, no, it's just going to keep entropying until even the entropy eats its own self. And then it will just keep going and there will be nothing and nothing will ever change ever again. And it'll just keep getting bigger. And I just like, no, I don't like that.
I think there's some, what can I say? Reason to believe that once everything settles out around that, like there's enough quantum foam going on that you can get a new Big Bang or something like that, right? Like once,
right? Like that's what I want to believe.
Yeah.
But like,
or there's an infinite. I kind of like the idea of an infinite, and this is all sci-fi slash pop sci. The idea of an infinitely inflating universe, and that like if you have an infinitely inflating universe and you have a pocket where things slow down, that's a new universe sort of start. That's a new Big Bang. And so there's all these new Big Bangs going on everywhere, but because the space in between the Big Bangs and the universes is separating so fast, they can never communicate with each other. And so there's all these Big Bangs going on all over the place, but they're just being separated by dark matter.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and also I mean, James Webb is telling us all sorts of new stuff, right? Like we're learning that
the
dark
James
matter
Webb of it all
might not be like it's the slowing down. We're looking at the third derivative now, right? Because first it was like, oh, is the universe static or is the universe changing? And we're like, oh no, it's changing, right? And then it's expanding. And then it was like, ooh, there's a rate of expansion, right? Like it's not just expanding, it's a single rate. The rate is actually increasing, And then we're going like, oh, actually the rate at which the rate is increasing is decreasing is what we're discovering. So we're looking at third derivative at this point, right? It's kind of crazy. So we don't understand what is causing this effect because it is at this point at least a third order effect.
No, the James Webb Space Telescope is one of the coolest things like in the history of astronomy, like since Hubble, right? Because we've had this just laundry list of questions that we're like, okay, once James Webb's online, we're going to be able to answer this, and this question. Like we've just had this list, this giant list of questions. And basically everyone we're coming up against, it's like, oh, that's not what we thought it was going to be. Oh, no, that's not what we thought it was going to be. That is, okay, back to the drawing board. Back to the drawing board. Like everything that we've been testing against its observations has been like, okay, we got to rethink everything. Like it's the most exciting freaking time in that regard. Because
there's the three things I've really heard of is we've got bigger galaxies than we expected to see in the early universe with more
well-defined
heavier metals, right? We didn't expect like that many. We expected mostly hydrogen and helium, right? And we're seeing like a bunch of like carbon and shit. We're like, wait, the stars haven't had time to make that yet. Where is it coming from? And we're seeing like little red dots that have a very weird X-ray profile, kind of indicate that something is going on there that we don't expect. So there's like that we're getting data that just doesn't conform to the idea that if we track backwards from existing galaxies, we're going to get smaller, newer galaxies.
Yeah. It's absolutely wild how many of our ideas about the universe are being upset by these very solid observations. Like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. Because
You're so wrong.
We're finally in the point where James Webb has been up there long enough that it's had like a year or two to collect data, and then another year or two for people to actually like really start analyzing that data and start pulling like meaningful information out of the data.
Yeah. The papers are getting published and processed by like regular pop scientists who can translate it out to the rest of us. And like, yeah, it's just from the moment that it came online.
And they've had a few arguments where some of the like the bad evidence has been like dismissed and gotten rid of, where people are like, no, that's not real, right? We've ruled that out, right? So we've had a few arguments where things that they thought. So the first like year of data, there was a couple of things that were like, we might be seeing this effect, and then the effect goes away with more data.
Well, I mean, Hubble had the whole being out of focus thing at the beginning, you know, like it takes a minute to get into the groove of using a new space telescope.
Well, it's not even that. It's just like with a certain amount of data, you're going to see stuff in the noise, and with more data, that noise goes away, and all of a sudden you don't see the results. So
yeah, and now like I'm so excited about James Webb. Like I was really like Hubble was a very formative event in my childhood. I was a very young child when it came online, so really like defined my whole concept of astronomy. And like James Webb really is like the second coming of Hubble. Like it's just escalating our ability to look into space to such an amazing degree.
Because it helps us look back in time, which is also really cool, I think, about it.
So much farther. And it's just like,
because we're looking at a different frequency.
We thought we were going to see the edge of time, and no, absolutely not. We're just seeing that there's more stuff.
Mm-hmm. Which, yeah, I mean, it's changing, which I think, because we have some holes, right? We don't understand quantum gravity. We don't understand how gravity fits in with the other.
Lots of holes.
Lots of holes in physics.
We know lots of things we don't know. Like mostly by the edge of time, I mean like the formation of early galaxies, like we were saying. Like,
and in a lot of ways, we have seen the edge of time because we've seen the background, the CMB,
cosmic microwave background radiation.
Yeah, the background microwave radiation is the initial moment at which light started being able to pass through the galaxy, right? Because before that point, everything was too dense. There were too many, and then the universe went from a plasma to gases and solids.
Right.
Right. And so it went from plasma to gas, and all of a sudden light could pass through the gas, and we get all these X-rays. That's the CMB. Right. And so that's the edge of the universe, right? Because at that moment, matter essentially forms.
But like we thought we knew what we were going to see between that and the most recently, the farthest back galaxies, and that gap between those two things is full of stuff we didn't expect. It's maybe a much bigger gap than we thought. Like there's just a lot more questions than answers, and it's cool. It's a good time to be obsessed with astronomy. It's a really good time for that. Because some of the biggest and smallest things can be helped with cosmology. Like quantum physics stuff is informed by our understanding of like the biggest things, you know? It's all comes around.
Because you need the biggest things to have enough energy to affect the smallest things, if that makes sense, right? Like,
it's so weird how, like, what is it? Gravity's the weakest of the six forces, and yet it's the only one that, like, we experience in, like, a tangible human sense.
I would say the other one we experience all the time is electromagnetism, right? Because pretty much everything, all your interactions with the world around you that aren't keeping you on the ground is electromagnetism, right? Like light, sound, you not phasing through your chair, right? You being a coherent atomic being, right? That's all dependent on the electromagnetic force. You don't see the weak force a lot because you don't necessarily see atoms decaying. That's not really
right. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Is the forces that only work at the atomic or subatomic scale. It's like there's no way to experience them.
And the strong force is why atoms exist, right? But like, you know, you are atoms, so like you're experiencing that, but there's not it's literally
impossible to separate yourself from the experience. Which arguably electromagnetism is kind of the same way. It's like, can you experience a thing without that? Kind of. Gravity is pretty, like, we all get gravity. We've all been bit on the ass by gravity. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone has tripped and fallen on gravity. That's just a thing.
Yeah. No, and then I like the idea of, like, space as an emergent property of time, you know? So there's some theories around that I heard recently.
Yeah. Yeah, I've come across this before, that space and time are emergent properties of something more fundamental. And it's like, you what now?
Well, time's so crazy because like nobody can really agree on it. Like it's all based on your relative acceleration in your frame, right? So
Right.
no one really you agree on the sequence of events, but not necessarily what time anything happens, which is I'm not even gonna try and wrap my brain around it or explain it. I would rather get into the Wheel of Time.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Please rate and review us on your podcast app, and consider supporting us on Patreon for ad-free episodes. Watt Spoilers is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.